Hello and welcome, all you IGNOU aspirants. If you're gearing up for your economics exam, you have come to the exact right place. We're about to dive deep into a really important topic, gains from international trade. By the end of this, you're going to have everything you need to absolutely ace this section. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the absolute basics. Why do countries even trade? Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of where the gains come from. We'll even visualize it with something called the production possibilities curve. After that, we'll see how to measure these gains, compare free trade to no trade, and wrap it all up with a super fast revision session just for your exam. All right, let's kick things off with the most fundamental question of all. Why do countries like India even bother with international trade? I mean, what's the whole point of not just making everything we need right here at home? Now, this is a question that really gets you thinking, doesn't it? If we can make something ourselves, isn't it always better to just do that? Well, the theory of gains from trade gives us a really powerful answer, and it shows why going it alone often isn't the smartest move. See, here's the key idea you need to grasp. Trade is not just about getting stuff we don't have. It's about ending up better off, having a higher standard of living than we could ever achieve on our own. And the magic really happens in two ways, through simple exchange and the big one, specialization. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On one hand, you have autarky, that's the fancy economics word for complete economic isolation. In that world, you can only consume what you produce. That's it. But with international trade, a country can actually consume more than it produces. Think about that. It lets us live beyond our own production limits, which means a better life for everyone. Okay, so we know these gains are real, but where do they actually come from? And what makes them big or small? This is a super important topic for your exams, so let's break it down piece by piece. Think of these as the different engines that trade fires up. When countries specialize, it's like a massive global division of labor. That leads to producing things on a much larger scale, which drives down costs. At the same time, it brings in more competition, which pushes our local companies to be better. And for us, we get more choices and better products. It's a win-win-win. All right, exam tip incoming. Pay very close attention here. A classic question is to list the nine factors that determine the size of the gains from trade. Trying to just memorize a list like that is a recipe for disaster in an exam. So I've got a little trick for you. Just remember this little phrase, credence F. Let's walk through it. C is for cost ratios. The bigger the cost difference between countries, the bigger the gain. R is for reciprocal demand. Basically, how much do we want their stuff and how much do they want ours? I for income level. T for terms of trade. That's the price we get for our exports. E for productive efficiency. And N for the nature of the commodities being traded. And to finish our mnemonic, credence F, the second T is for technological conditions, S is for the size of the country, and here's a little nugget of gold for your exam. Smaller countries often gain proportionally way more from trade. And finally, F is for factor availability, what resources a country is blessed with. So there you have it, credence F. Burn that into your memory. Okay, enough with the lists for a moment. Let's actually see what this all looks like. To really get a handle on trade, economists use a super important graph that you absolutely have to know for your exams. It's called the Production Possibilities Curve, or PPC for short. This graph is basically a map of a country's maximum potential. So imagine India can produce two things, software and textiles. The PPC shows us every single possible mix of those two things we can create if we use all our resources efficiently. Any point on the curve? Great, we're being efficient. Any point inside it, we're slacking off. And any point outside, well, that should be impossible, right? We'll see how trade changes that game. Now for a key bit of jargon. The slope of that PPC has a fancy name, the marginal rate of transformation, or MRT. But don't let the name scare you. It's just the opportunity cost. All it's asking is, hey, if we want to produce one more unit of software, how many textiles do we have to stop making? It's all about the trade-off. So, the shape of this PPC curve tells a story. You might see a straight line in a textbook example, which means the trade-off is always the same. But in the real world, the curve is usually concave, bowed outwards. This shows an increasing opportunity cost. And that makes sense, right? As you shift more and more resources from making textiles to software, you eventually have to start using resources that aren't very good at making software. So you have to give up more and more textiles just to get a little bit more software. So we've agreed there are gains from trade, and we can even draw a picture of a country's limits. But how do we actually put a number on it? How do we measure the gains? Well, let's see how some of the legends of economics thought about this problem. This table is pure gold for your exam notes. You had Adam Smith's, who just said, look, the whole economic pie gets bigger. Simple enough. Then Ricardo came along and said, it's about being more efficient, saving on costs. But then J.S. Mill asked the really clever question, okay, the pie is bigger, but who gets how big a slice? He said that's all decided by reciprocal demand, which sets the all-important terms of trade. Today, we usually break it down into two simple parts. First, you get gains from exchange. That's the easy win you get just from swapping what you have for something you want at a better price. But the real, massive gain comes from specialization. That's when you actually change what you produce to focus on what you're best at. That's what really boosts your whole economy. And all of this leads us to the really big debate, right? Is a policy of being open to the world, of free trade, really always better than just closing the doors and going it alone in that state of autarky? Well, the theory on this is crystal clear. Without trade, you are literally trapped by your production possibilities curve. You can't go beyond it. But with free trade, you can. Your consumption possibilities suddenly explode outwards. You can produce efficiently on your curve and then trade your way to a point of consumption that was totally impossible before. It's the key to a higher standard of living. All right, deep breath. We're in the home stretch now. Let's pull everything we've talked about into a quick, high-speed revision. This is the stuff you absolutely need to have locked in your brain when you walk into that exam hall. You ready? First things first, the jargon. You've got to know these terms cold. Autarky, PPC, MRT, terms of trade, and reciprocal demand. Oh, and one more, the offer curve, which is a graph that shows how much a country is willing to trade at different prices. Knowing these definitions is easy marks, so don't miss out. And these are the big ideas, the main takeaways. Gains come from two things: exchange and specialization. The whole reason we trade is comparative advantage. And please, make sure you know the difference between static gains, the immediate benefits, and dynamic gains, which are the long-term game changers, like technology transfer and new investment. And what a perfect way to end our revision, with a quote from the man himself, David Ricardo. It basically says it all. The whole point of trade is to increase the sum of enjoyments. It's about making life better for people by giving them more. So, as a final thought, I want you to connect this theory to the world around you. Think about how these very ideas, especially those dynamic gains we talked about, explain the story of India's economy since the big reforms of 1991. When you can apply the theory to your own life, that's when you truly understand it. Okay, that's it for me. All the very best with your exams.